Hello, the internet. Welcome to Dave Green's Street View Show. My guest today is comedian Paul Sinha. You may know him as one of the regular chasers on ITV's award-winning quiz show, The Chase, and his Radio 4 series, History Revision. How you doing, Paul?
Very well, now that you got the title right for the third time of asking.
Don't tell them that. We'll pretend I nailed it first time. All right. So where did you grow up? In Mitcham, right?
Well, I don't remember much about the first 5 years of my life, really. My dad was a itinerant doctor, so I was actually born in Luton in 1970, where my dad worked as a doctor, and then my sister was born in Norwich in 1973, where my dad worked as a doctor. Then we moved to Wimbledon, where I have the vaguest memories, but my first proper memories were from 1975 to 1979, aged 5 and 9 me. We lived in a road called Hoylake Gardens in Mitcham, in Surrey.
Mitcham. So let's
about to see quite
an
idyllic cul-de-sac.
Is this the one?
This is exactly it. Yes. I can't remember the name of the side road. Can you find the name of the side road? Can you see a side? I can't remember what it's called.
This thing.
Yeah, this road has a name, but I can't remember.
Hoylake Gardens.
No, Hoylake Gardens is where I lived.
Oh.
This connecting.
This
road.
thing.
Oh, maybe it is Hoylake Gardens.
It's
okay,
all the same.
Enough.
All the same, man. So what was it? How does this feel looking at this again now? When was the last time you were here?
I currently live about 15, 20 minutes drive, and I occasionally just drive down there to get the whole Marcel Proustian childhood memories thing, because I think most people recognise your childhood memories are your richest memories. And this was, even though it was only from the age of 5 to 9, it was a cul-de-sac where we knew most of the families on the road, and as a result I had childhood friends. And actually that house there is the house we lived at.
That was you.
If you go to the other side of the road, so opposite there, that house there, the first one over there, my sister's still best mates with the girl that she met when she was 3 years old in that house in the 70s. They're still the bestest mates in the whole world.
Wow, that's cute.
And in fact, in the back garden of that garden, for some reason, we were once throwing stones over the other side, and someone threw a stone back, and it hit me on the head, and my head cut open, and I had to go to hospital. Oh, so really? rich memories.
And did that inspire you to become a doctor? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you go back to the house we actually used to live in, it wasn't as big as that. There's clearly done some work. There was this side extension bit here. What didn't exist, I don't think. But what's interesting from a 5 to 9 year old boy's point of view is what's next to that, which is the back gardens of a very large cemetery, which was fascinating.
You can just about see the graves over there.
Yeah, you couldn't be more fascinating. Used to climb up here just to have a look at the graves, but one day, me and a friend called Jay, Jay.
There you go, you can see it, look. Oh, wow, it's massive.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive.
Oh, my Lord.
We just climbed over the fence and vanished. And we, in these days, you just wouldn't do that, because you'd be aware of the panic that you'd put on your parents.
Yeah.
But we were kind of surprised to find out that when we returned several hours earlier, there'd been a massive police search.
Oh, really?
For us. The police had been called and people had been looking for us. Because all we thought was we were going on an adventure. We weren't mature enough to realise the consequences of not telling anybody what that adventure might be. If you go back to Hoylake Gardens...
Hang on.
So yeah.
So where's that? So would it be here? Is that where we were?
Yeah, I think so.
Kind of. Oh yeah. I got it. Yeah. Cool. So what sort of thoughts went through your head when you were looking at that graveyard? What do you think fascinated you about it?
It's just the fact that there was no.
Move in this way a bit, actually, because I've just realised.
Just the fact that you didn't have any parents controlling where you were, where you were meant to be, was quite liberating, and also the sense of the unknown. We had no idea what we were going to find in that cemetery. As it is, we found nothing other than graves. But that didn't really take away from the sense of adventure. And then one of these houses down here lived Barry, who was I think it was this house here, lived Barry, who was the bully of Hoylake Gardens.
Oh, really?
And he once started stinging nettles in my face, and my dad had to go and give his dad a bit of a talking to. You can imagine how well that went. But I remember specifically that Barry lived in that house, and none of the kids went anywhere near Barry's house. I don't know his surname, so I'm not slandering or libelling anyone. But Barry, I'm still bitter. You put stinging nettles in my face for no reason other than his own amusement.
So you haven't forgiven him over time?
No. And then the other thing is, if I could be a little bit dark, if we go around the side, one of these houses to the side lived a family whose son got killed in a rail accident where he stuck his head out of a window.
Really?
And for that reason, I was always emotionally attached to the Stereophonics debut single "Local Boy in the Photograph" because it was about a similar sort of tragedy.
Yeah.
And that tragedy hit our road in the late 70s. Everybody knew about it.
Maybe you did. Yeah, you did used to hear about that, didn't you? God, what a way to go!
I have richer memories of more detailed memories, just because there's so many other people that we knew, and I'm old enough to remember the 1977 Jubilee party, and we still have photos in our household of the Jubilee party that took place on this very road in 1977. Yeah. Everybody came out. It was a more innocent time where you could have street parties and no one would be the slightest bothered. A proper sense of community where pretty much everybody knew everybody.
Yeah. Oh, that's really nice. So you still live around here today, yeah? I
don't live in Mitcham, no.
I know. Where was the next place you lived?
In 1979, we moved to Upper Norwood, which we call Crystal Palace to add a glamour to it.
Is that this?
Hermitage Gardens.
Yeah.
So, Hermitage Gardens I lived in from the ages of 11 to 20, not including the 2 years at university, obviously. And it was that house, that very house. Now, you'll see that there's no front wall there. There was a front wall until January the 25th, 1990, the day we moved house, was one of the two massive hurricanes that hit Britain, the other one being in 1987. And that entire brick wall just collapsed in front of our very eyes as we were putting stuff into the removals van to move house. And my mum, God bless her, thought this was a sign that God didn't want us to move house, and she was crying her eyes out, going, "This is a sign. This is a sign." But as opposed to Hoylake Gardens in Mitcham, we didn't really know any of our neighbours, apart from a man who I assume has passed away.
This guy?
No, not this guy.
Look.
Absolutely not this guy. But what he doesn't know is he used to live in that house. Used to be owned by a minor TV actor called William Merrow, who was an elderly gentleman who lived in that house and used to occasionally play me at chess and then get annoyed when I used to beat him. And William Merrow was vaguely famous for about 2 years when he played a doctor on the hospital soap opera Angels. And for us, that was like the biggest thing that had ever happened in our life, is that our next door neighbour was a TV actor on Angels. He was a lovely guy with the most hopelessly tragic story because he'd just lost all of his family in the Holocaust before coming over to Britain. And when I say all of his family, I mean, the whole works. And he'd tell us stories about all that and give us a bit of perspective on life. He's an absolutely smashing guy. And he was the only neighbour that I knew. I'd go around and listen to his stories and congratulate him on being a TV star and play him at chess. I didn't really know any kids in this neighbourhood. If you come back out of the road and then go to the end of the road and then take a left and then keep going, you'll see to your right a massive park. But I never had anyone to play in the park with.
Not even the chess guy.
Not even the chess guy.
I guess he was not your age.
You have a massive park here.
That's so sad, Paul.
And it went relatively... I mean, my dad's friends used to play cricket against us, but with us, but that's about it, really. And it was a fairly... Lonely's not really the right word, but fairly mundane childhood that I had from the age of 11 to 90. The adventures were all from the ages of 5 to 9. Yeah. And then I just got into the books and the education. And
so I was going to say, what did you do to pass the time if you went?
Read general knowledge books. Were you quite
bookish then? Yeah, okay.
Very bookish at an early age. But that was You never hardly ever see anyone in the park, and
There's no one there now. Look,
and
it's not a single person.
And I still live quite near here, and when I drive around, I never see anybody in the park at all. It's just the great.
That's a shame. So you still have a yearning to play there.
Play cricket there, yeah.
So let's go to where you're living now, because we can probably click there from here, right?
Yeah.
Which way would I go?
So take a right here. Take it all the way to the end of the road. All the way.
So you must like it in this area, right? If
it's where my family all live. So
yeah.
If you take it all the way to the end of the road, longer road than I imagined. If you don't take a left, but if you do take a left, you're just somewhere around there is where my sister lives with her husband and my nephew and niece. But I don't want to invade her privacy. Yeah. And if you go all the way up here, right till the end. Across the roundabout, right to the end, you come up to my least favourite road junction in the world, because you've got cars coming this way, that way, this way, and this way, and 1 in every 20 drives home from a gig, I find that the police are cordoned off the area because there's some sort of accident. This is Harvester, which is where you live, always. I don't live in the Harvester. I'd love to, because I quite like a Harvester. Their chicken and chorizo on skewers is to die for, and I'm sometimes so lazy that I'll drive the 60 yards from where I live.
Oh, and just park there.
Just park there and go in.
Hang on, that's your car, yeah? No.
But I actually live.
We don't have to show your actual house.
No, or flat. But I
live in this area.
I live
right?
about 100 yards up on the right.
Okay, cool.
And what lovely thing about it is it's very quiet. It's very peaceful.
Yeah.
Apart from the accidents that happen, you can see how dodgy the junction, because sometimes cars have to come from here across the road to there. I think we're about to witness one.
Very slow motion crash. There you go. He's
he's
on the grass.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What's happening there? He's got a camera set up. That's weird.
I'm not entirely sure.
Very strange.
But it's suburbia. In essence, it's suburbia.
Yeah, it looks very relaxed.
We are about 15 minutes walk from the shops and restaurants of Crystal Palace, but you wouldn't know it walking down the street because it's all so quiet.
Would that be this way?
No,
the other way.
The other way.
So so let's talk about. So you had that neighbour that was on TV, right? And how at that age did you have any aspirations to be a performer? Or
no.
So you weren't looking at him thinking, I could do that.
I never had a performing bug at all in my childhood. I mean, I used to play Indian folk songs and British UK chart hits on the piano, and that really was it. But I was in love with stand-up comedy as a viewer from a young age. The whole, the early sort of work of Ben Elton and other comedians on Saturday Live and Friday Live in the mid-'80s.
Yeah.
I think a lot of comedians my age fell in love with comedy through that. The idea that you could just stand at a microphone and just say anything just seems such a revolutionary concept. The fact that you could talk about important things as well, which is less fashionable now to talk about important things, but for quite a number of years people would go, my name's been Ben Elton, good night, to parody Ben Elton when they've said something that they think might be important.
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing luxury.
So was that really, because obviously that was a big break from the comedy that had preceded it, and did it really feel like that at the time, even because you must have been, how old were you when all that stuff was kicking off? Of
14, 15 years old.
Okay.
And all my friends used to love it as well. That was the other thing. It was something you'd talk about with your mates. But by friends,
come in this way a little bit, because you might disappear.
By friends, a lot of my friends were fellow Bengalis who, my dad was part of various social groups, either through being a doctor or being into Bengali music and culture. And so a lot of our friends were kids of West Bengal, from people from Calcutta or West Bengal. And we used to sit in each other's bedrooms and discuss the music of Suzanne Vega or the politics of Neil Kinnock or whatever into the small hours. Those are my friends that sort of informed me culturally. your school friends don't tend to inform you culture. They're your friends because you're in class with them.
Yeah, yeah. They just happen to be nearby, right?
Yeah. We're going well off.
Am I? Yeah, where am I? Sorry, man. Sometimes I
downhill.
get carried away.
Going downhill very fast.
Literally.
Heading towards South Norwood. I think if you take a right there, you head off to Crystal Palace football ground.
All right, let's do it.
Possible.
So how did you start in comedy then? How did you start doing it?
I wrote a lot at medical school for reviews. I was kind of the nerdish, not particularly popular kid at school who would write jokes rather than concentrate on his work.
So you wrote jokes as a kid? That's quite rare.
Well, jokes, parodied songs,
all right.
Changed the lyrics to songs, that sort of thing.
I mean, you actually wrote that because I mean, lots of kids are like, you're the class clown. Usually, you're making jokes, but you were like,
no. By class clown, I mean I was just writing bookish, nerdish jokes at the back of the class when I should have been concentrating on work. Not class clown in the sense of a natural funny bones person. I was never that, and I don't think I am now. To be fair, I don't think I have funny bones. I just can write jokes. I failed my finals, my medical school finals, which is a bit of a shock. I mean, not a shock to my friends. I think they could see it coming from a mile off. But I never actually realised it was going to happen. I spent 6.5 years of the happiest years of my life, really, at St George's Hospital Medical School in Tooting.
Let's have a look at that. We got that on here. So that was your halls, I think.
There we go.
This is the hospital, yeah?
This is St George's Hospital Medical School in Tooting. Now, astonishingly, the Lonely Planet, as many people know, announced their 10 coolest neighbourhoods in the world recently. And of all the places on the planet, Tooting had reached the top 10, which, if there's any group of people that will be that will be the most astonished, it will be anybody who lived in Tooting between 1988 and 1995, as I did, because Tooting was not cool. I mean, it had a wimpy. That was considered one of the better things about Tooting, is it had a wimpy and a spudgy like. It's well known for having lots of curry houses, but none of the curry houses at the time were particularly good. They were just catering for, mass catering for the locals. It was a tough old place, Tooting. People would get mugged regularly. There's 2 or 3 pubs that you just were told not to go to because of their alleged IRA sympathies and slight tension in the air, shall we say. And the idea that it's now one of the coolest neighbourhoods in the world is certainly a mystery to me. I mean, I have as you would about any place that you lived in for 6.5 years, I have a great fondness for the place. But I think the Lonely Planet are barking up the wrong tree slightly. I think there's probably places in New York or Rio de Janeiro that are hipper. I mean,
it was in the world, really.
In the world, yeah.
That is absolutely
if you
insane.
If you come back this way, if you turn 180 degrees from here. Oh no, that's not right. If you turn 180 degrees back, sorry, and then go down this road, I think you'll see for a start, you'll see that Tooting is not all that. I mean, pleasant enough place as it is. And also, it's been a long time since I've driven down this road myself, so I could be in for surprises. As indeed I am, because that used to be a massive... It's all changed, you see. There used to be a massive Indian superstore, and that's where everyone used to get their food, called Deepak's.
Yeah.
No, I think here. But it's all this is the thing. If you don't go to a place for a long time, it suddenly is a miss. I mean, I know that road. In fact, many of my friends used to live at number 5 that road, number 5 Karma Road. But if you keep going, this rotates towards here. This used to be a massive Indian superstore.
This one.
And it's a shame to see it's gone. I know, maybe it's the next road. The next road up here. No, it's all gone. It's all changed.
So what was happening in your life around this time? So you were studying...
Drinking.
Drinking, all right.
Drinking. And even now, some of the pubs I used to drink at are not there. But if you go to the if you go to Selkirk Road,
Up here.
Good Lord, it's confusing, isn't it? Oh, I mean, I'm reliably informed. No, right. So, here we go. Keep coming back.
This way.
Back towards the way this car is going, and then take the next right. Down there.
Down there, yeah.
Down Karma Road. Spent many a night in number 5 Karma Road. If you're watching, girls.
Who lived in number 5?
The most fashionable chain smoking group of set of cynical girls you'll ever meet, who everybody knew in
nurses?
No, doctors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, chain smoking doctors. Yeah, many a good party at 5 Karma Road. Fantastic memories. But then if you keep going down the road.
So most of those people all still in medicine now?
Oh God, yeah. I'm the only one that.
I imagine, yeah.
I'm the only one that fell through. Keep going, and then take the next right. That should hopefully be Selkirk Road.
There you go. Yeah, that's you.
And then if you keep going, there we go. On the corner plot is it used to be called the Selkirk, but it's now called because everything's changed. Oh, it's still the Selkirk. I thought it's called the Frog and Forget Me Not or something or the other. That is probably where I spent most of my time in my 6.5 years at medical school. Lovely pub garden with a little pond. I remember my mate lost his phone in that pond. It's quite nice to see these places again, I'll be honest with you. I've heard rumours that everything's a lot... I mean, there was no such thing as gentrification in Tooting, literally. Everything was spit and sawdust. The restaurants were rough, the kebab houses were rough, the pubs were rough. There was no such thing as gentrification. So here, what's happened to Tooting in the 20 years since I was last living there is just amazing, really. Because you can't get a 1-bedroom flat now for anything less than 600 grand. Because it's near the tube station, and it's just that I'm watching with my own eyes through your Google view how much has changed and how much gentrification has taken place.
And how does that make you feel? Does that make you feel sad, or?
Well, I don't think you can expect the world to be standing still while you get on in your life. I don't think you can return to Tooting and expect the memories to be as you left them. No, I mean I'm really.
There's not much you can do about it, is there?
I mean, I'm really glad that Tooting's on the map. I mean, I felt a sense of bewilderment and pride when I saw that article in Lonely Planet. Pride that Tooting's got a mention, and bewilderment because it was clearly a load of nonsense. It was clearly a load of nonsense, but it's still nice to see them on the map.
So what happened with medical school? Because you dropped out, right?
I didn't drop out. I became a doctor. I failed my finals.
You failed your exam.
And in the 6 months I took out, I went to watch a lot of comedy. Saw some really good comedians. Saw Johnny Vegas doing one of his first gigs at the tryout night at the Cosmic Comedy Club. Was that before your time?
I know that one.
Well, it was a place on Fulham Palace Road that I think might have been purpose built, but is now flats like so much is these days. And Cosmic Comedy Club was where you could do tryout competitions in front of and feel glam. They used to have a Tuesday night tryout competition, and anyone could enter. You just had to ring up. And I remember seeing Johnny Vegas win the tryout night there back in 1994. So you could certainly see stars of the future. I've done the tryout night with Mickey Flanagan, Jeannie Yashere, Lee Mack. I think I've done the tryout night there with all three of those at some stage, and that was in Hammersmith. But at the time that I did my first ever gig, I was working as a doctor in St Helier Hospital in Carshalton. I don't know if you can bring that up, St Helier. Again, I'm saying all these things. I don't even know if these places still exist.
And you spell it Saint
Helier.
IER.
Yeah, there is. Incredibly grand building that you can see from miles away. Yeah, again, unused park. And I knew St Helier quite well, actually, because as a kid, a lot of my dad's friends used to do shifts. We used to come over from India and do locum shifts at St Helier Hospital. So when my dad used to visit his friends, they were actually often living in St Helier Hospital. And I never thought at the time that one day I'd be spending my life living in St Helier Hospital when I was a kid. But for 6 months, from February to August 1995, I lived in that delightful building there in what I call 6 of the unhappiest months of my life. Not that it isn't a good hospital, but I was just treated like shit by everybody senior to me. Treated god awfully. In the days when, I don't even remember a TV show called Cardiac Arrest written by Jed McCurry, who went on to write Line of Duty. No. But it was a bleak and apocalyptic view of the British National Health Service that was entirely familiar to anybody who was doing junior house jobs in hospitals like St Helier Hospital. It was constantly stretched to the absolute limit. And as somebody who's doing his first ever job there, that was my first ever medical job, it was pretty terrifying, not least that whenever anything went wrong, everybody from who's above you would try and shift the blame on try and get rid of any blame they might have by shifting the blame onto the most junior member of the staff, which was not the point of being a junior doctor. Your junior doctor is meant to be that you're not meant to put yourself in a situation where you can cause harm, because you are a junior doctor. Yeah. But it was that 6 months that I started formulating the idea that maybe I should give stand-up comedy a go. Not because I wanted to be a comedian, not because I ever thought it would be my career, not because at the time I wanted out of medicine, because in your first job, you're not going to you've worked 6.5 years to get to where you are. You're not going to suddenly jump ship. Simply because I wanted to be somebody who could say to people, "Oh, I did stand-up comedy once." That's all I wanted. That's literally
that was the extent of your ambition.
That was the extent of my ambitions. And as you know, Time Out magazine had a list of all the various clubs and the contact numbers for open spots and this, that, and the other. Back in the great days of Time Out magazine, and I just found a place called a company called Har Bloody Har that used to do a Nuat competition on a Friday night. Gave them a ring, and they gave me a gig in about 3 or 4 weeks in a place that was miles away. I mean, barely in London, called the Viaduct Inn.
Which we've got in here, right? In Hamble. They still run a gig there, you know. The Bearcat runs a gig now.
And I've been there, and it's great.
Here we go, that's it.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's a very, very nice pub. But at the time...
They do it in that back bit, right?
Yeah. That through that door, yeah. At the time, I think, apart from my medical finals, it was probably the most terrifying thing. And I think if you keep going this way, there should be a park just there somewhere. I spent about 2 hours walking around that park, going through my lines again and again and again. I was just so... Always at a cemetery.
You're so worried about forgetting it, aren't you? When you start?
Absolutely. And 5 minutes is nothing. I mean, some comedians barely get started now at the 5 minutes. Barely started at the 5 minutes. That was the park.
But when you started out, were you more of like a joke guy when you started out, or were you always quite political?
No, political. Good Lord, no. Anybody who starts their comedy political is insane, because you can only get away with doing political comedy if you're really good. And it doesn't matter who you are, when you start, you're not really good. Mm-hmm. If you're going to give people your opinions on stuff, be good. So anyone who starts as a political comedian is insane. No, it was very much detached and deliberately bad taste one-liners, bang, 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 thinking, I want to get myself noticed. And it was all very, very openly gay, which doesn't sound shocking now, but back then there was virtually nobody working the circuit. There was a guy called Bert Tyler Moore who went into writing, and a guy called Scott Kapora, who we both know, and from the male side. And then there was Donna McPhail and Rona Cameron from the female side, and that really seemed to be that.
That was it, yeah.
In terms of openly, I mean, now you got every variety of openly gay comedian you can actually imagine. But when I was in 1995, it felt like I was doing something different, something new, even if all I was doing was telling really bad taste jokes.
And was that a conscious decision? Were you like, if you're going to talk about your sexuality, you felt like you had to do it in that way?
Yeah, but not least because it's also
like you had to make a big deal.
Also, I had to make a choice between going ethnic or going sexuality when it comes to the comedy, I've got more insight into the sexuality thing because I feel like it's a bigger part of who I am.
Yeah.
It's a bigger and more unusual part of who I am than the ethnicity side, because I was brought up by very westernised parents who imbued Western values in me from a very young age. I don't actually feel culturally that Indian. Yeah, I still support India at cricket, and yes, I've got a really good knowledge of Bengali folk music and culture and whatnot. But my cultural reference points in my childhood were not Bollywood or Bhangra. They were Western music and Western films. And so I feel that if I tried to play on Asian stereotypes when I do my comedy, I'd be lying. Because my life and my family life don't really conform to those stereotypes. Whereas what I wanted to do was bring something sort of very matter-of-fact and non-camp to the idea of being a gay comedian. But that's irrelevant. I must stress, all of this is irrelevant in June 1995 in a room mostly filled by my mates from medical school, and the other half filled by complete strangers.
Yeah.
And you're doing your first ever 5 minutes. And the worst part of it was that the first act who was on was amazing. And I absolutely shat my pants because I'd seen enough bad comedians in the 6 to 8 months I've been watching comedy. I'd seen enough bad comedians to know that if I was going to be on the bill, I wouldn't be the worst person on the bill, I would have thought. And then this guy who gave up to be for a job in the city called Oliver Turnbull. I think if you Google Oliver Turnbull and comedy, you get nothing now, which is incredible because he was a professional comedian who had a really good career but gave it up because he had something more lucrative. And he's fantastic, this Oliver Turnbull. If you're listening out there, you were great. And he was so funny and so fiercely funny. I thought, I'm in the wrong place. I made a terrible mistake. And the first 2.5 minutes of my set, I felt that even more, because I just didn't get any laughs. Everyone was just staring at me. But I pulled some laughs out of the last 2 minutes, enough to just keep going. Just about enough.
I guess the first time you're just thinking about surviving, aren't you? You're not analysing what you're doing at all. You're just,
and also you have no. I mean, it's different now. A lot of people are very, very ambitious when they start, and it's not long before they have a plan and a rota and what to do and they've got a file of all the jokes they've done and this and the other. I just wanted to say I'd done comedy. I hadn't even begun to think of the second gig, where that might come from or what that might be.
Yeah.
This was just do a first gig. That was all it was.
So there must have been a time, though, after you've been doing comedy a couple of years, where you were working as a doctor in the day and trying to juggle this comedy career.
Well, what happened is after my first job at St Heliers, I moved to Norfolk for a good 2.5 years.
Did you?
Queen Elizabeth Hospital.
Should we look at that?
Yeah. Queen Elizabeth Hospital, King's Lynn.
Was it King's Lynn?
Yeah.
So you worked here for a little bit?
In those woods.
In that bush, yeah.
In that bush. I'm probably not going to reckon... Oh, I remember the car park. And if you keep going... This is all a very distant memory for me now. I remember Hoylake Gardens and Mitcham more than I remember this, even though I lived here for
3.5 years, you said?
2.5 years.
It's all right. So, so what happened? So you were down here, still doing comedy?
So I'll do comedy every 4 months or so when I've got a week off work. I'd use it, not to go on holiday, but to do a couple of gigs in London. It was very, very sporadic. I can't really say. I mean, it is a classic. It's a classic District General Hospital. That to the right is the social club, and that is actually bringing back some memories. That is the Queen's Hospital Social Club, where I played for their pool team in the King's Lynn Pool League a couple of times. And there was a quiz machine. In there was a games room with a pool table and a quiz machine. And I used to be absolutely addicted to both, as you can probably imagine. Enough, as I said, to represent the hospital in the King's Lynn Pool League on at least two occasions. This is where I saw England versus Germany in the 1996 Euro 96. This is where I watched Liverpool beat Newcastle 4-3 in consecutive years, 1996, 97. Those are my main memories. This is where I sang Common People by Pulp at karaoke. I got my finger drunkenly got my finger caught in a door. I had to go to hospital because it was bleeding everywhere. This is
it all happened. This is the hub.
This compact hub is where I have
a building full of memories.
A building absolutely chock-a-block full of memories. Particularly, I think, Euro '96 and the pain of the second penalty shootout that England lost to Germany. Nobody
Let's
could
look at the cloudy sky to represent that.
Nobody could speak afterwards. And even though King's Lynn is quite a bleak place, I have to say that the hospital was a little oasis of happiness. I mean, I quite enjoyed my 2 years there.
You hungry?
Don't know what's going on. So this was the sort of this was sort of the slightly more mundane, my life not really going anywhere, years of my life. When I'm making some money as a junior doctor, but I've got no idea where my career is going. I've certainly got no idea where my comedy career is going. But I'm just sort of biding time, really, waiting to see what I wanted to do with my life.
And then what happened? Where did you go after this? What made you move out of here?
The fact that I'd run out of jobs to do, because I'd been just going from one job to another without really any idea where my career is going, and I just kind of ran out of jobs to do. So I ended up back in London, living with my mum and dad for a couple of years, and working as living with my mum and dad for a year, and working as a GP trainee in Newham. Just completing my GP trainings. I've done half the jobs here, did the other half jobs in the East London area, and I've got to say, that was tough. There were times when to go from a relatively quiet town to Newham was quite the step up. And I actually used to get sleep on call in King's Lynn. Almost an unheard of concept of getting sleep on call. But in Newham, there was no sleep.
It's good to know.
General.
Well, should we look at the High Street?
Well, the High Street's a fair.
Or is it not that near? Let's look at it. Where did you live when you were here?
For a start, at my mum and dad's, and then I moved in with one of my best mates to Forest Hill, Rockbourne Road.
All right, that's right. Let's write that in.
ROCKBOURNE. There we go. I lived there for 4 years before moving out to Beulah Hill. Whereabout?
Another cloudy day.
Again, this has changed so much. But that was the pub at the end of the Telegraph where we never went. And then I won't go into any specifics because the guy's still living there. But one of the houses that sort of backs onto Rockbourne Road, the Telegraph, is where there's a very good branch of Maplin's. This church was ludicrously crowded every Sunday, and you couldn't get a parking spot on your own road because the Afro-Caribbean community just used to converge on this church on a Sunday. There should be a very good branch of Maplin's where I still go from time to time, just to the left of to the left of the church. There we go. And then a shout out to
Maplin's.
No, not a shout out. if you keep going back the other way, I still
this way.
Yeah, even though I left here in 2002, if you take this set of shops to the left, you've got the Duanium Indian restaurant here. Duanium, but then you've got dry cleaners there. They have almost £100 worth of my clothes on them at the moment that I'm picking up tomorrow. Really? I've still been loyal Look, it may not look like much from the outside, it has to be said.
Clanners, dry clanners.
But these people are superb value, and have never ever, touch wood, let me down in the 15 years that I've been using them. Absolutely superb. Even though they're 20 minutes away from me in the car, I still go and dump all my stuff there.
There we go. Shout out 2001 dry clanners.
As you can see,
why have they put the year on there?
I don't know.
Is that their name? Like it was meant to sound futuristic.
I don't really know. But as you can see, gentrification hasn't really hit this this part of Forest Hill at all. There's not a lot, and there's the bus that takes me back home. But so Forest Hill was an interesting. I mean, the first time I lived with just one person, and that although he was my best mate, could often had his own stresses.
Who was that guy? Do you still see him?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, he was a guy that actually, funny enough, was worked with as a doctor in King's Lynn. We just hit it off from the start. There's not an awful. I'll warn you here. There's not an awful lot to see. It's quite It's quite a landscapeless, featureless.
Where should we hit now? We got Edinburgh on here, haven't we? Maybe we should speak about that. Or the Comedy Cafe. What happened there? That was an awful gig, right?
Oh, you want to know my worst gig? My worst gig is probably worse than anybody's worst gig. My worst gig was a Christmas gig here. I'd already done one on the boat in the Thames. And
this is, we should say, Comedy Cafe in East London.
In East London, Rivington Street. And I've got I must stress, I have a lot of happy memories. Dying on my arse there in 1995 with Ross Noble comparing. Several nights out drinking at the Bedroom Bar, which is... and a lot of really good gigs at the Comedy Caf as well. I mean, I have lots of happy memories. But sometime I think it was 2008, I was put to do a Christmas gig there, and nobody told me that I was following Ricky Grover. Nobody told me that everybody would be either steamingly drunk or, I suspect, coked up to their eyeballs. And it just never, ever took off. But that's not the story. So... One of the punters tried to go up to join me on stage. I didn't know what to do. A security man came and dragged him off stage and just said to me, "Get into the kitchen." You remember the lovely kitchen? Lovely kitchen.
The phrase you never want to hear on stage.
And I waited in the kitchen for 45 minutes while a mass brawl took place.
Really?
And the police were called. And I thought, wow, you've got some powers as a comedian. If you
had caused it. What were you saying when the guy tried to come on stage?
I just can't.
It was nothing.
I just cannot remember.
He didn't take umbrage to what you were saying.
In fact, while nobody was watching, I left through the kitchen through the kitchen door about 45 minutes later. I looked to the left, and they were still fighting. And the police were there, and I just thought, Merry Christmas, everybody. That is the way to celebrate. That is very much the way to celebrate a Christmas comedy gig.
It just shows how not involved you could be in a gig. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It also.
How does a fight? Do you know what I mean? A fight can only break out because it's just so.
Well, it's a mixture of. There's two. I think two.
What I'm saying, Paul, is it wouldn't have happened if they were paying attention.
Well, no, but I think too many clubs are too lenient towards the to the pairs of men that go to the toilet together. There's too much leniency towards that, in my opinion. That's what causes the aggression. I feel it goes over from lack of attention to actual aggression.
Yeah.
That's very much what seemed to be the case here. I bear them no ill will. I'm not entirely sure how many times I've played there since. That's the great thing about a brawl taking place when you're on stage, is that regardless of whether it's your fault or not, they will still blame you at some level for the fact that it happened. But I must stress, I've got a lot of very fond memories of playing there over the years, and I wish them well.
Yeah, it's a cool place. What about Comedy Store? We got down
here. There we go. The good old
Comedy Store.
There was no need for a reminder that it's next to TGI Fridays. It doesn't look like much from the front, does it? Can we get in close enough to see who's on the bill?
Oh, maybe actually.
Be great if it was me.
Oh, that's the King Gong.
Joe Caulfield.
Can you see any of those names?
Joe Caulfield, Paul Thorne, Marlon Davis, and Luke Toulson. A little piece of comedy history compared by Math Brown. It's the best comedy club in the country, pretty much, isn't it? I don't know quite. I don't think all the things that make the Comedy Store great are necessarily deliberate, but I think there's been a synchronicity in positive things. Mainly the shape of the room and the low ceilings makes a room of 450 still feel very intimate. But it was where my life changed in December 1988. I was on call, in fact, at Newham General when I got a call from Don Ward of all people. Called me on call, saying, "I see you're on our list of open spots in June this year. We got something coming up in next week if you want it." And actually, a week before that, I was considering giving the whole thing up. So I'd had 2 or 3 bad gigs in a row, and I was considering giving up the whole thing. Going, well, it's been fun. You got your dinner party anecdotes. This is 1998. It's been fun. You got your dinner party anecdotes. Probably time to give it a rest and concentrate on your medicine. But this was my last real shot, really, in my head. This is my last real. This is a chance to play the Comedy Store. I've never played the Comedy Store before. At least if it doesn't go well, I can say that I've played the Comedy Store. And the bill was stupendous. It being December, the bill was Lee Hurst, Gina Simpson, Paul Tonkinson, Ricky Grover, and Tim Clark. Real high-powered stuff, which made me shit my pants metaphorically quite a bit. But I think if you've got some good jokes, 5 minutes at the store can be one of the easiest things in the world. And I had the advantage that whoever was on in the first half didn't do very well, which meant that when I came on, audience expectation was low. And I think that's probably a positive thing, having low audience expectations, so that you can confound that. But the gig just rocked from start to finish, and there was a shadowy man in the distance in the back of the room, an agent called John Keys, who swooped to the front, swooped to the dressing room, gave me his card, and said, "I'd like to have a chat with you." And that was that. That was the beginning of the comedy career. After 3 years of being a junior doctor, who was only doing about 5 or 6 gigs a year, because he was working full time as a junior doctor, I got my big break at the Comedy Store and signed with an agent within a week. Nice. I didn't know that he was the agent that brought Jim Jeffries, Steve Hughes, Rich Hall, Mike Wilmot. He's the agent responsible for bringing those people to.
Oh, he's the guy that brings people over from the States. All right, I know
absolutely.
That guy.
And so that was that. The Comedy Store, Don Ward ringing me up, as opposed to anyone else in his diary, on a fateful on call at Newham General, changed my life. I would absolutely not be sat here now if I hadn't knocked that gig out of the park.
And how long did you keep on doing medicine for?
Fully trained as a doctor as a GP in 2000. Did locum work in and around the southeast area for about 7 years, and then gave up in 2007.
I mean, just full
November
time,
the 26th.
Full-time comedy. Yeah, you remember it. You would remember that date. Right, let's look at Edinburgh as well. We got that on there. What was this? You wanted to look at the jazz bar, right? What happened?
Well, this isn't a great story, but this is when I walk around Edinburgh.
Where is it? Here we go.
When I walk around Edinburgh, I always so this is Chambers. This is Chambers Street. That's Nicholson Street.
Yeah.
That's Chambers Street with the C venues over there. Although it's interesting that they're not called the C venues when it's not the Fringe.
Yeah.
But in 2006, or was it 2007? No, 2007, I think. On my last show of the Edinburgh run, I bumped into a guy that he used to be about 4 or 5 years older than me at medical school, called Kaushik Bhattacharya. I'd always known who he was because I knew his younger brother, and Bhattacharya is a Bengali name. So Bengalis have a way of zoning in on people that they know from the same part of India as they are. He was working as a doctor in Glasgow, but living in Edinburgh. He was working as a doctor in Edinburgh, and we got chatting and we reconnected with each other. He was at my medical school, but 4 or 5 years older than me. Reconnected and formed a friendship that was so life-affirming and energising that I just loved him. He had a really tough life with a marriage split and the fact that he barely saw his kids. But he just constantly grabbed life by the cojones and just decided to live it. He would take me out to the best restaurants. He'd constantly be drinking, but sadly I think both of those things caught up with him, because in this very jazz bar, a place that he absolutely loved and knew all the staff, he had a heart attack and died in 2010. in his mid-40s. And as a result, I just can't go anywhere near that place. It's just I couldn't possibly walk into the jazz bar and do a gig there, because it's a place that he'd taken me to so many times. I can't honestly say I'm not into jazz, and I can't honestly say that I enjoyed going there, because I'm just not into jazz. But I enjoyed how much he loved it, and it was his favourite place in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And because it was his favourite place in Edinburgh, I can't actually face going in there. I know they do some gigs comedy gigs during the Fringe, but if there's a place that always fills me with sadness, it's walking past the jazz bar, because I remember getting that phone call from his younger brother about what had happened. And on one level, you think, well, he died in a place where he most loved being, but he was so young. He was in his mid-40s, and there's all that prodigious talent gone to waste. That always makes me feel really sad. There's always I love Edinburgh, and I love the Edinburgh Festival. There's always a tinge of sadness at friends lost, and that's why I don't ever go in there. But you did say, what's a place that makes you feel sad, and that's the place. That's the place that makes me feel sad.
That was in relation to the sad.
And of course, as you know, if you do the Edinburgh Festival, you spend a lot of time walking these streets.
Oh yeah. But do you think, is that something every time you would walk by here, you would think about that? Yeah, it's hard not to, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. That's my only reference point for the place. That's why I used to go drinking with Koshik.
Oh, that's really horrible, man. Are you still coming up here to do shows?
I did Edinburgh this year, yeah. I loved it. I mean, I do absolutely love Edinburgh, despite the fact that the old town is creaking under the weight of this massive number of people. I mean, I'm not a fan of big crowds. That's something that happens as you get older. And I'm not a fan of what the Fringe does to the city, but I'm a fan of the Fringe, if that makes any sense. But I think that the population could be dispersed over a much wider area rather than being concentrated so massively in the old town. It's quite nice, I must admit, seeing these images of what Edinburgh looks like when the Fringe isn't there. It just looks like a far more pleasant place. The weather's about right though, isn't it?
Right, let's talk about your quizzes as well. Where is it now? Oh yeah, this. So you run a quiz here, right?
No, I don't run a quiz here. This is the Calthorpe Arms. If you're a real ale fanatic, and you live in London, it's one of their favourite pubs. But I'm not a real ale fanatic. I'm lager, and so I don't quite see it. But it is the home, this top room up here, of my Quiz League London team. The Graham, this room here, is the home of my Quiz League London team, who are called the Grey Monks, who I joined in 2009. And when I joined them in 2009, we were a collection of misfits who underperformed every season, and would be sort of a yo-yo team, second division one season, first division the next season, then back to second, back to first. In fact, when I joined, they'd never ever stayed in the first division for more than one season in a row. And we've worked hard, and we worked as a team, and we've all become really good friends, and we are the current reigning champions of the Quiz League of London, which is the most prestigious quiz league in the world. It's got the best quiz players in the world playing, and we never even dreamt in a million years. I mean, we finished second the year before, and we just giggled and thought, what on earth was that? How on earth did we finish second? And then last year, everything came together. That's our, and the Calthorpe Arms there is home to the actual champions of the most prestigious quiz league in the world. And it sounds tedious to say it, but it's true. It's possibly the achievement I'm most proud of in my life, because it's with other people. I think you fetishise things that you share with a success that you share with other people, more than that you achieve on your own. Because,
for sure.
And it was amazing. We played 18 games and we won 16, drew 1, lost 1, against literally the best quizzes in the world. We just never thought it was possible.
And how did you get into the quiz stuff? How did all that stuff start?
I was always into quiz. In a relatively minor way. By relatively minor way, I mean I represented both my junior school and my senior school at quizzing, and then at medical school I was one of what I now know to be many people who'd spend their lives travelling from pub to pub, playing on quiz machines, taking out what they could, and then moving on to the next pub. I didn't. I thought I'd be like.
Oh, what? Just on those like arcade?
Well, there's quiz
yeah,
machines, yeah. Because when quiz machines first came out, they hadn't accounted for people becoming what would happen if someone who was actually really, really good at quizzes played on the machines. It seems
weird now, doesn't it? That
well, I've got a friend who used to make 25 grand a year. Oh, that used to be his job.
Yeah.
You can't do it now.
It wouldn't work now because of phones as well. You could just Google it, right?
Well, no, it's not. It's not so much that. It's just that the machines are calibrated differently now, so you can hardly win. You can hardly win any money.
Yeah.
But back then, they were calibrated in a way.
Seems like a massive oversight, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was a massive oversight. But back then, if you were a really good quizzer, there's every chance you could walk out with £10 or £9, because you have to put £1 in. So you're making £9, and then you have to buy a drink to justify being in the pub. If you got lucky, you could get another £10.
You couldn't quite make your living off it, but
well, no. When I say this, my mate used to make a living off it. I meant that he would visit 50 pubs in a day.
Oh, really?
I mean, we're talking about a seriously organised methodology. Whereas I was just someone that used to spend my early 90s just wandering from pub to pub, and not really making money out of it in the sense it was always spent on beer. It was never going. It was never going to any other cause other than funding your evening out. But then I did a lot of pub quizzes. Then I sort of drifted away, and then in 2007 I got an opportunity to appear on a show called University Challenge the Professionals, in which me, Natalie Haynes, Simon Evans, and Pete Graham, who runs the King's Head, decided to represent the world of comedy on the show, and we thought we were going to be quite good. But they put us up against the best team in the first round, and we got annihilated. Well, beaten, not annihilated, beaten badly. And I just reacted badly, A, to how much we'd been beaten by, and B, how smug everybody seemed to be. And somebody at the bar afterwards said that they thought we played quite well for a team of comedians.
Oh, really?
And it was that...
insinuating that comedians are thick or something.
Yeah, exactly. And it was that comment that made me go, do you know what? I've got this far. I've got onto University Challenge Professionals. I've got this boil that needs lancing, this addiction to quizzes that I've always had. And I decided to really go for it. And then this is where I found out about the world of Quiz League London, these subculture worlds. And it was getting into the Quiz League London and national quiz tournaments that made me start taking it seriously, to the point where by the time ITV in 2011 decided they wanted to hire a fourth chaser. By that stage, I already knew the other three chasers on the show, and they told me, we think you should apply." And that's kind of how it started. But I have to say that although the glamorous end of quizzing is being on the chase, the real quizzing is the Calthorpe Arms
the pubs,
on a Tuesday night. In fact,
real deal.
When I said to you I need to be somewhere at 6, I need to go for the social, for the annual beginning of season social for the quiz.
Oh, is that where you're going tonight?
Yeah.
All right, yeah. And you know how like comedy, there's a certain type of people drawn to comedy, right? Is it similar with quizzes? What sort of people end up doing that? I imagine it's quite a tight sort of world.
I'd love to say that the world of quizzing is massively diverse. I'd be lying. It's not massively diverse, but it's certainly far more diverse than it used to be. When I started, I was in the Quiz League.
All gay Asian guys.
Yeah, exactly. Right. When I started in the Quiz League of London, I was the only non-white member of the Quiz League of London and the only openly gay member, and that neither that is remotely the case now. As I think there was a sort of what I would call the sort of things that civil servants know, by which I mean politics, the Battle of Agincourt, that sort of thing. There seemed to be a bias in the questions towards that sort of thing.
Yeah, okay.
That meant that people who thrived the most were sort of people who'd done some sort of PPE or politics degree at university. Yeah. And now it's much better than that. You're just as likely to get a question on, the Canadian rap of the weekend or something as you are about anything. They've tried really, really hard. I mean, I could wax lyrical about this for a long time, but they work really, really hard to contemporise the questions and make sure that everybody's interests are covered. so that if you are a Doctor Who fan, you will get your moment in the sun. If you are a fan of Love Island, there will be a question where you might be the only person in the match who actually knows. Who actually knows.
There must
the
be
answer.
quite an art to that, right? Setting the questions
Yeah.
to make sure.
Yeah, well,
And it can never be totally fair. I mean, what's fair? Because
there's no such thing as fair, is there, really? But we try really, really hard. If you go onto the website, there's statistical analysis there's statistical analysis for every question that's ever been asked.
Of what people might know,
It's amazing. It's a massive organisation now.
And does that help? Is there sort of any crossover with your comedy and the quiz stuff? Do the two sort of skills help each other? I don't know. Would you call it a skill?
I think all Venn diagrams interact in some way. Sometimes there are answers that I know because a Facebook friend of mine who has a comedian says, "Did you see that show last night? It was really good." And I look it up and I find out the answer. So, I think, and a lot of comedians are very, very good at quizzing. It has to be said. In terms of performance, of course, being on telly helps my comedy, and being a comedian helps me on telly. So they both interact with each other. But the biggest change is my audience. Now that I'm on telly, people know who I am, and I just don't know. I mean, I was going fine as a comedian, but I didn't really know where my comedy career was, what the next step was going to be. And then the Chase came along, and suddenly not a household name, but a sort of minor level celebrity, and the audience has both grown and changed. So it's grown in terms of numbers and changed in terms of the average age of people coming to see me, which tends to be a bit older.
And do you get people coming to see your comedy shows because they've seen you on the Chase?
Yeah.
And aren't really aware of what you do as an act?
Yes.
How do they react to that? Are they surprised?
Some of them walk out, it has to be said. Preview season this year has been tough because I took a show to the Edinburgh Festival about gay heartbreak, and that is not what a lot of people expected me to be talking about. In an hour. I think the problem.
They just expect you to be reciting facts.
I think the other thing is it's when you're doing solo. I think over 20 minutes it doesn't matter. Over 20 minutes, if someone doesn't really empathise with your worldview, or doesn't empathise with your political view, or doesn't really understand gay people, I don't think that matters because it's 20 minutes of their time, and they'll give you that chance. But over an hour to an hour and a half, you've really got to be into someone to enjoy them for an hour to an hour and a half, and that's not always easy if someone doesn't share your worldview. You hear about all the time about comedians complaining that their Brexit material is not going down well in front of a pro-Brexit audience, and it's like, you know why? It's because they've come out to see you. When you're in a comedy club, you're one of 4 or 5 people they've come out to see. But when you're on your own, you're the reason they left the house. You are absolutely why they've got a babysitter in, why they've decided to take the next morning off. It's all you.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot more pressure. I feel that pressure all the time when you're on your own. That people will turn up all really excited because of the car of the Chase and realise quite soon that it's just not their thing. I hate the stress of living. I actually hate living with that stress because I don't want to be a disappointment to anyone. I want them people to be more proactive about researching the comedian that they're going to see. So I don't want to be a disappointment to anyone. I want them people to make a more what's the word? Advanced choice.
Okay, informed choice.
Thank you. A more informed choice about the comedian they come to see. It's a bit better at Edinburgh, but I still feel it sometimes at Edinburgh.
So what you're saying is it's kind of a mixed blessing. Like your audience has got a lot bigger, but then it's slightly
you're always
confusing.
You're always at risk of. I mean, at Peterborough last year, a woman came up to me afterwards and just said, "Was there any need for you to swear so much?" And it was like, well, no, but that's who I am as a comedian.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why it said 18 plus. We always put 18 plus on all tickets because we don't want kids to come to the show.
Yeah,
and there's always a danger if you're on the telly, the kids will come to your show, and it's like I don't want kids to come to my show. Wait till you're 18 and then go and watch the show. And I'm not a particularly rude comedian. That's the other thing. I mean, I'm probably halfway on the scale between 0 and 10. It's just that I'm on daytime telly, so people expect me to be 2 or 3 instead of 5. In that scale. But I'm not compromising that just because I'm on daytime telly.
The thing is, you are going to get, presumably, you're getting people that love what you do on the Chase, and then like, and this guy does awesome comedy as well.
Oh yeah,
there's
a mixture of everything. But you know how comedians' brains work. You only look at the negative.
Yeah, of course.
If 200 people come and see me do a stand-up show, if 180 people really like what I do, my brain will focus on that 20 and feel terrible that 20 didn't feel awful that 20 didn't enjoy it. So I'm not saying that the majority of the room. I'm just saying that the comedian's brain finds them.
Oh, of course.
We can see the person sat there with them.
No, it's horrible, isn't it? To feel like you're disappointing people. But
yeah. But I don't think it's my fault. That's my point. People should make informed choices.
I hear what you're saying. Right, so I think we can round it off if we go back to... This is the way I like to finish it. We go back to where you grew up. And then say, like, if you could give some advice to the past Paul Sinha, the childhood Paul Sinha, what would you say to him?
Don't climb over that fence into the cemetery. There's nothing to see, and you're going to worry the shit out of your parents. That would be the first thing to say. Always be grateful. Always be grateful to the hard work that your parents put in to give you the opportunities that you now take relatively for granted. Eat cuisine from the whole world. You never know what you're going to like. Take chances, and give medicine a go, which I did, of course. Give medicine a go before deciding whether it's for you or not. If I had to do anything differently from what we discussed today, I'd probably have tried to start comedy a bit earlier. I'd quite like to gone in when there were quite a few fewer comedians about, and I mean, you're now, anyone starting comedy now is now competing with so many people. That's crazy, yeah. Whereas when I was an open spot, there was no pressure. Nobody was expecting you to take it seriously. Everybody around felt like they were in some sort of midlife crisis, and they were doing this as a bet or a dare to themselves. And I missed that. I missed the idea of performing comedy without any great ambition or pressure, or feeling this has to go well or else. I kind of miss that. But other than that, don't be afraid to learn from your mistakes, and just don't be afraid to move on. Melvin Close.
Great. I think that'd be a good place to end it, Paul.
Yeah,
or have you seen something that...
Beverly and Melanie Hudd, two of our friends, used to live in that house there. And what I will say about house parties, birthday parties, it was always ABBA.
Always ABBA.
Yeah, the soundtrack into the of kids' parties in the mid to late 70s was almost entirely dominated by ABBA. I grew up in...
They had a lot of hits, man.
I grew up in an ABBA household. I grew up in an ABBA community. Everything was ABBA, ABBA, ABBA. This is amazing, just watching these memories go past.
That's cool, man. Thanks for coming around and doing it. Did you have fun? Was it cool?
Yeah. More than anything else, I get very Proustian looking at where I used to live in Mitcham.
Yeah.
And
that's the idea, man. You see these things and
all these places have memories. And I also find quite nice is just how many of these houses have had extensions. I think from what they used to be. Really, really happy memories in Mitcham.
That's great, man. All right, so I think that'd be a good place to round it off. So let's zoom out into the sky. And that's it. Thanks for coming on the show, Paul. I've been Dave Green. He's been Paul Sinha.
And I've been absolutely astonished by exactly what Google can do.
It's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you again next time. Cheers, guys.